Hello everyone, Squee913 here. Welcome to another edition of Thoughts Behind the Wheel. And slightly above it, because I'm taller than the wheel is. It has been a while, I know. I've recorded one of these earlier, but it didn't work. I'm not sure why. My video editing program hates these segments of Thoughts Behind the Wheel. I have a sneaking suspicion something happens in between the transferring from my iPhone to my computer that corrupts the file or some weird thing like that. It doesn't work that well, but oh well, that's in the past until it happens again in the future. Hopefully it won't happen with this one. So, today I wanted to expand upon something. A couple days ago, my good friends, Kriana, Piff0, and Inferno Canuck, and I were Skyping it up, yos, and chit-chatting, and we got into a conversation about the end of Neon Genesis Evangelion. The conversation is actually up on Kriana's channel. I'll put a link to it if you want to hear it, because Kriana sneakily was recording us. And I should point out, we had no idea we were being recorded. Oh, yeah. So, of course, we did give her permission, though, before she uploaded it. She's not that evil. Evil, but not that evil. So, here was the deal. Here was my big issue with it, and I want to expand upon it as well. And this also goes for Mass Effect 3's ending, and pretty much any ending in general. Now, see, I've been thinking about the structure of a story a lot lately because I've been trying to write one for my Skyrim Let's Play. I've written the overall story, but now I'm trying to go back and write the small details, flesh it out, so to speak. Plus that in Arena, it's been a lot on my mind of how to write a story and what makes a good story and what makes a bad story. Now, before I get into this rant, I need to make very, very clear, this is just my opinion. My opinion is not any more valid, excuse me, wow, than anyone else that burps into the microphone unknowingly. My apologies for that. No, my opinion is not any more valid than anyone else's, so take it with a grain of salt. Alright, here's the problem. Evangelion started off as a nice, anime that was kind of like a boy coming of age, romancing his coworkers, like any other person that's asked at a young age to enter a giant robot and kill giant monsters and save the world. Happens all the time. It started off kind of a lighthearted, fun adventure anime, which was fine, and I liked that. And then I eventually got to watch the end of it, and about halfway through, somewhere around there, it starts taking a turn for the dark and the confusing. And then it takes a turn for the dumb and nonsensical. And by the end of the anime, it is supposedly completely symbolic to the point of where it makes no sense anymore. Here's the problem. A lot of stories, these stories in particular, they think that at the end of the story they need to make some giant message, some great symbolic statement of humanity and philosophy and sociology or whatever, and they try so hard to do this and be symbolic and edgy and make you think that they lose sight of, this tiny little thing called the story. And Evangelion was very bad about that. In fact, after we talked that night, I actually looked up what the ending was supposed to mean. It was like an article written by like an expert anime reviewer or whatever. And it was like a 6 or 7 page article explaining the ending of the anime, which first and foremost, I personally believe if you need a 6 or 7 page article to explain the ending, it is not a good ending. You should not have to explain it. But basically, they even said that the creator had a nervous breakdown about halfway through the series, and after he had that nervous breakdown is when the series took a dip, or some people say a rise. Some people think it was a work of genius. I just happen to be not one of them. But basically, he had a nervous breakdown, and then the story started going way symbolic and head trippy and therapy sessions, etc., and he started trying to send a symbolic message out. And he himself admitted that in the last few episodes he just completely ignored the story in favor of the symbolic message because he didn't think the story was important. Yeah, that's the sign of a good writer. I don't think the story is important. I'm just going to completely dismiss it. Sound like another thing out there? Mass Effect 3 looking at you? No? Are you going to forget the plot line completely? Because if you think about it, that's exactly what Mass Effect 3 did too. The second Harbinger's beam hits you, the entire plot of your crewmates with you, stop the Reaper, etc., was pretty much abandoned in favor of a deep symbolic message that made no sense. But not quite as bad as Evangelion. Evangelion literally, the story was just non-existent anymore, and it was all just a head trip inside the main character's head. And here's the problem. Two problems. First of all, if you're going to go for the symbolic ending, you need to do it from the beginning. You need to think, understand, or decide from the second you sit down to write your story that this story is going to be a deep symbolic message about something humanitarian-like. Because it shows. It needs to be consistent throughout the entire story. You don't need to sit there at page 80 of an 85-page story and go, ooh, you know what would be great? A symbolic ending. No. Because then it's not consistent and people can tell and it makes no sense. And it seems to be this huge trend that movie makers and video games and anime and all this story writers want to do these days. Look at the third Matrix movie. It's like they want to all of a sudden make an ending that's so fantastic and complex and big that they just completely forget about the entire story. Inferno Canuck made an excellent point that really an ending is just part of the story, and that's all it should be, is an ending to a story. It doesn't need and should not be this great thing in and of itself that is supposed to be so massive that it makes you forget about the story in general. An ending can be great, it can be a plot twist, it can be climactic, it can be epic, but it should still just be part of the same story. And it seems a lot of people forget that, and Evangelion was one of them, in my opinion. There's a couple of things that you should keep in mind. Here's where, in my opinion, because I thought about it really long and hard, what their pitfall was, and what Mass Effect 3 pitfalls was. They tried to be too complicated with their theme. A theme should be simple. Characters can be complex. Plot lines can be complex. Don't make it too complex, and make it very well explained so that plot point A leads to plot point B, but it can be complex. Themes, on the other hand, need to be very simple. Fear, love, hate, loss, anger, betrayal, whatever. The theme should be explained ideally within one word, maybe two. If your theme is a reflection of humanity's inner nature to want to destroy what it finds beautiful, no, your theme is too complicated. Go back to the drawing board. I'm sorry. And like I said, it's my opinion, but really, if you're trying to do that for a theme, you're probably going to shoot yourself in the foot. Like Mass Effect 3's final theme was... what was it? What was Mass Effect 3's final theme? Try and sum it up in a few words. You can't. The best I can do is the internal struggle between... struggle between organics and synthetics and wanting to save organics from being destroyed, and by doing this you have to make the ultimate sacrifice and whatever. You might be able to say sacrifice, but even that doesn't completely encompass the theme of what they were trying to get across. They were trying to be a symbolic message of humanity, and they were trying to be a symbolic message of organic versus synthetic, and a symbolic message of Shepard having to sacrifice. It was too much. And it made no sense. Evangelion, I don't even want to attempt to try and say what that theme was at the end. So, keep your theme simple. You can be more than one theme. You can have fear and loss and see how one leads to the other. Maybe trust and loneliness, how the lack of trust leads to loneliness, and that's great. And you can see how they interact. And you can even have each character represent a theme. And that's fine as long as each theme is simple and has a clear connection to the other themes. This character represents trust or lack of trust. This character represents betrayal. This character represents revenge. That's fine because the character's A's lack of trust relates to the character B, who's all intent on revenge, who is fixated on character C, who had done betrayal. Those are all fine, and those will give you all the plot line complication you need. Yeah. And here's another thing, another problem that these things fall victim to. If you're going to go for symbolism at the end of your story, which isn't in itself a bad thing, you can be symbolic, but it also has to be simple. It also has to be easily understandable. The audience has to look at that and go, oh, I get this symbolism. It's a statement on yada, yada, yada. It can have a deep underlying meaning. In fact, some of the truly great symbolic endings have the ending that everyone gets, and then the ending that you get only when you think about it for a long time. And that's fine. Why? Because it also has the ending everyone gets. If it just has the ending that you only get when you think about it for a very long time, then you have failed as a story writer. Because 90% of your audience are going to leave your story confused to holy hell. And that's not a good thing. You need to be able to... I'm trying to think of a brilliant example, and I can't. But, you know what? No, a great example, and this isn't the ending of a story, but this is the middle of a story. And you know what? I would also say probably a better place to put your crazy symbolic scene is the middle of a story, not the end. That way, your end can make sense. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, the third movie. And I know most people hate this movie. I thought it was a fun movie. But anyway, the scene when you first meet Jack Sparrow in Davy Jones' locker, where he's insane. He's talking to other forms of himself, and then the ship's in the desert, and then he licks a rock, and the rock turns into a crab, and the crab moves the ship, whatever. First of all, you'll notice this scene wasn't the end of the movie. It's not how they decided to finish the movie, which is a good thing. But this scene had a very simple, overlying message. Johnny Depp, or whatever, Jack Sparrow has gone insane and is being tortured by his own insanity in Davy Jones' locker. Everyone can see this scene and get that. Now, I heard there was someone who wrote a thesis, one of their theses in graduate school, on what all the different layers that scene really does represent in the human psyche. And that's fantastic. And that means it was a well-written scene, because there's the message everyone gets, and then the message that only a few people get when they really think about it. And that's brilliant. You take out one of those, mainly the first one, and it's no longer brilliant. Evangelion had the message that you might get when you think about it long and hard enough, and that was it, and therefore was not brilliant. It was just frustrating. Mass Effect doesn't even get that. I'm sorry, but the entire fan base has analyzed this over and over and over, and even if Starchild believes what he's selling, there's no way Shepard should, so it doesn't work on either level. So anyway, look, the point of this message is, if you're going to try and write a story with a deep symbolic meaning, there's a couple of things that you have to do. First, you have to plan on doing this from the very beginning, because consistency is key. You need to be trying to tell the symbolic message throughout the whole story in small chunks, so that they can digest it a little bit at a time, not slap them in the face with the entire message at the end. B, you need to keep your themes simple. You can have multiple themes, you can have complicated characters, and you can have complicated plot lines. You need simple themes. And C, if you do a symbolic ending, you need to have two layers of it. One, the symbolic ending that everyone can get, and two, the symbolic ending that you get only when you truly think about it. Why? So that 90% of your audience can watch your story, read your story, etc., and feel like they received some sort of conclusion. If, again, Inferno said it best, if your audience leaves your story confused, this is not good. Got it? Also, and this is more of a personal thing, what is so wrong with simple? What is so bad about having a simple antagonist and a simple protagonist? Look, I'm all for deep characters from time to time, but it's become this trend that everything needs to be, oh, he's not really a villain. He wasn't loved enough, and so he really thinks that what he's trying to do is save the world, even though it's not saving the world, but that's what he wants to do, and you're supposed to feel sorry for him, and it's deep and it's complex, and you have to be emo to understand it. You know what one of my favorite villains of all time are? The Joker. The Joker from Batman. Especially Heath Ledger's performance, but pretty much any incarnation of the Joker. And you know why? Because he's simple. He is incredibly simple. He's a complicated character, per se, but he has simple motives and desires, and he follows those simple motives and desires to extreme circumstances. He wants to see the world burn. That's it. He is insane. He wants the rest of the world to suffer in chaos like he does every single day. He thinks it's fun. He thinks that it will be great. He thinks that it will be, oopsie, there goes my microphone. Better that way. And that's it. That's the end of his complexity. He has no more complexity to that. He wants to see the world in chaos. And you know what? That makes him a really good and scary character, because there's no reasoning with him. There's no good side to him. It's just either stop him, get out of his way, or get steamrolled. That's it. There's nothing wrong with having a simple character, and maybe a simple hero. Maybe the hero needs a little bit of complexity. But especially when it comes to the antagonist, why do we need these very complicated, daddy didn't love me enough all the time, Freudian villains? Sometimes it's okay to have, a villain with simple motives and simple desires. And sometimes that makes it even better. So, just keep that in mind. Just throwing it out there. Also, try not to end your story in horrible depression. You can if you want, if you like cutting yourself and all that. But like Evangelion, basically, from what I grasped, the whole theme of the story, the concept was that the main character, Shinji, starts off depressed and unsure of himself, starts to gain confidence through, saving the world a couple of times, and then through a series of events, proceeds to lose all sanity whatsoever and spiral into a descent of depression and insanity. And that's how the story ends. Yeah, guys, do me a favor. Don't end your story like that. Stories need to maybe not be uplifting, but have some sort of positive message, at least, if not a positive outcome. Not drown you in sorrow and despair and make you feel like after you watched it or read it that you need a therapy session. All right? So, until then, folks, I love you guys, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.